every time we talk about a segment, and then that night, like something happens that directly impacts it. Like that's how this stuff works. And Bobby Witt Jr. hits a home run last night. Kyle Tucker hits those 2 home runs. Aaron Judge and Juan Soto both have some good games as well. No movement from the top, according to BetMGM. Juan Soto's still plus 275. Bobby Witt Jr. is plus 325. Judge plus 375. Gunnar Henderson plus 450. And then Kyle Tucker does move from plus 800 to plus 700. Now tied for the league with home runs. And we were talking yesterday about the MLB straw poll that came out for MVP. Tucker was second in that behind Juan Soto. So, Ken, just kind of your thoughts on last night in Major League Baseball with these guys continuing to play well and Tucker's price continuing to drop here.
Yeah, man, I just think this is the most interesting award market going right now in baseball, I think, just because, depending on, it's almost like the Celtics, right? You can, if you're a pro Celtics guy, you look at him and you go, oh, like historic season, they got in a clutch game and figured it out. And if you're anti-Celtics, you're like, see? Like you could, all 5 of the big 5 players that can win this award, like you're going to kind of order them differently, maybe based on like how you liked them coming into the year, biases that you might have, what you tend to favor when you handicap an award. Like there isn't really a wrong answer for who you should bet on right now. For you get 5 different people, they might give you 5 different answers about who's going to win AL MVP this year. You don't find award markets where there's that multi-pronged, where there's that many options, a quarter and now getting closer to a third of the way through a season. Doesn't really happen a whole lot. Even like NBA MVP this past year, like, yeah, you could have thought Embiid was going to get hurt, but like then you would have liked Jokic or SGA maybe, and you would have had them in a very clear order, like no matter what really after that. Like even if you liked long shots, this is like there is no order. Like it's 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, and 5A. Now they're priced differently, but that's just expectation, I think. I think the expectation is just, really, is Kyle Tucker going to keep doing this? Really? Like I look at the prices and that's all I think. An impactful part of that game last night, not just that he had the 2 home runs, but they were very instrumental in the result of the game. The Astros need wins. Like they need to win games, and they won because he hit that second. Like that was a big deal that happened last night versus like an A-Rod home run, right? It's like 10-3 in the 9th inning and he hits a solo home run. Like this wasn't that. Like they need to start stacking wins because their team success needs to be good enough that he can be in a conversation with these other players or be close enough. So look, I mean, the opinion hasn't changed from yesterday. We liked Kyle Tucker yesterday. He hit 2 home runs. You think we're going to hate him today? Of course not. Just that like with each day that goes by, you almost have to have these benchmarks in your head and go, all right, well, like on June 1st, if he's still number 1 in everything, then he kind of needs to be this. And then June 15th, if he's still number 1 in everything, he kind of needs to be this. And on July 4th, if he's still number 1, and at the All-Star break, if he's still like, there's a certain point where it doesn't really matter if we thought he was going to do this coming into the year. He's doing it. Now, we're not there yet. We're only like about, 30%, 30% of the way through the season, something like that. So it's not time yet to be like, this is a thing. It's still early enough. It doesn't have to be a thing. But May is always that really interesting month where we go from nothing matters. Like you could do anything for 30 games to start the year and nobody cares. And May is the transition from that to like, it might be a thing. Like might be something that lasts us the entire season, both in terms of teams that are playing really well or poorly, players that are playing really well or poorly, pitchers it takes a little bit longer because there's just so few starts. Like you still got to wait, I think, to know who the dominant pitchers are, sometimes until like June or the All-Star break to really know kind of like what's going on. There's so few innings, so few starts. But yeah, like Jake and I'm sure Jake agrees with this. Like we're still really pro Tucker. If we're ordering these guys 1 to 5, I don't think he's 5th. I don't even know if he's 4th. I think his bottom is 3rd right now in terms of how I would have him handicapped to win. You mentioned Soto and Judge. They didn't really do anything offensively last night, and it's been a couple games without like a breakout performance. The Seattle series is obviously going much differently than the White Sox demolition that happened for a few games before that. And of course, you play the White Sox, then you play anybody else, it's going to go a lot different because it's the White Sox and it's anybody else. Just not going the same. So, again, as these at-bats start to add up, and you can get really granular with this stuff. All 5 of these players are so good. I mean, Gunnar Henderson bricks the first game of a doubleheader today, gets an RBI base hit like later today. If that's all that happens and they resume this game 2 against the Cardinals and he goes 1 for 10 plate appearances, Like in 2 games, all of a sudden you're like it's that minute where those things just it really does shift that 1 to 5 order game by game. You're shifting that 1 to 5 order. The most impactful betting thing I can say right now, I don't have Tucker fifth and I don't have him fourth, and he's priced fifth. And doesn't mean he's going to win, but I think that's the ordering right now.
Kind of thinking about betting the under in game 2. Any thoughts for you on that total as it continues to climb after we saw 133, 128 yesterday in game 1?
Yeah, my only hesitation. So I hear what you're saying, right? Hey, everybody played a ton of minutes. The pace was blistering, and it's it's a tighter turnaround. Boston doesn't have all the time off that they normally have, so maybe like there's a way that it doesn't look like that. Maybe the Pacers don't shoot quite as well. They shot incredibly. They also turned. So there was like the perfect scoring combination. They shot really well and they turned the ball over a ton. So like it was either like a Pacers make pretty fast or a turnover that led to a Boston layup in transition or something like that. Like leads to higher scoring. Maybe there's a little less of that. Sure, like I would buy that argument, and that you're getting a little bit of a break on the price. 224.5 is like slightly higher than how the market was shaped most of yesterday on the total. Like okay, I think it's like pretty reasonable. I don't think this is like a slam dunk, necessarily, but like I think I get that argument. I go back to the tight turnaround and for the in Pacers Knicks to game 3 to game 4. And the Knicks fatigue actually led to one of the best Pacers games of the season, despite the fact that there was no time between the games. So that would be kind of like my only thing where, oh, well, like how, everybody played a heavy minutes. It was overtime. But can they do the same thing again? Like they did. Like the Pacers ran the Knicks out of the building in that game. They were up 30 at one point in that game. The Knicks quit because the Pacers played so well. And you could be like, well, that was more about the Knicks. Yeah, but I think it just proves that you didn't get a clunker Pacers game off of no turnaround kind of a thing with the pace that they play. This is what they do all the time. I think your case for the under, I think I agree with some of the points that you made. Hey, look, like, why do the Pacers have to perfectly mix possessions to be makes or turnovers that lead to buckets the other way? Can we throw some misses in there? Can Halliburton not turn the ball over so much? Of course, these things are both possible, and maybe get you under the total. I think a blowout would also help you out a lot, where the Celtics can actually kill the clock in the fourth quarter would be really helpful, as opposed to these frantic Pacer runs every time the Celtics get up 8, 10, 12 points in a game. I mean, this is why the series, I think, is so confusing. I don't think it's confusing who's going to win, but I just think it's confusing, like, what kind of games are we going to get? Are the Celtics going to be able to kind of boot on the throat at any point in these games and, like, just, like, comfortably win by margin? Is that even possible with how the Pacers play? We're 0 for 1 for them trying to do that last night. Every time they got a lead of a certain margin, the Pacers were able to come back. So I just think it makes it really tough. And that I will draw a comparison, Peach, to a game that I bet last night, just to because I think people are like, really? Like, you don't like it? It's the most important game. You don't like anything in game 2? So I bet a baseball total last night, which I never do, right? But I bet the under in the Cubs game. And because there was something interesting happening in that market, right? The total opened a very high number anyway with the Braves-Cubs game, and 10.5, and then everybody kind of ran with the same information. The wind was going to be blowing out. The weather was really conducive to scoring. These were facts. This is not even like a analysis. Just like, this is what it was. And so everybody bet the over in the game. The total closed like 11.5, juice way over. And look, the total easily could have gone. Like, I actually watched a lot of the game. It was nationally televised. I think it was on Turner, and the game ends up going under the total. But that was a game where, like, I didn't know anything about the game, like, coming into the day, but I learned a lot more about it because I saw something interesting happening in that betting market, right? Hey, there's a lot going on here. There's like a ton of movement, and the movement seems to be driven by information as opposed to just like interest from sharp bettors or something like that moves a line one way or another. No, there's actually like a mania developing around like that this game has to go over and there's going to be a billion runs scored. Okay, well, now my interest is peaked. The problem with trying to just like hammer away at these games over and over and over again, these NBA playoff games sometimes, is there's only one every couple days, or there's only one every day. You may not get any interesting stuff going on like that in the side market or the total market. Maybe in a prop market, there's something interesting going on because a player scored or didn't score, like the Josh Giddey stuff in the last Thunder series, I think was really interesting one way or another, like how you wanted to play that stuff. Is there anything like that happening here? I have a hard time. It's just, here's the same market plus a point on the total from game 1. I don't know if I feel strong enough in like the conclusions that I drew from game 1 to be like, nope, now I've got it. And, and this actually isn't right. Like there's actually something different going on here. I don't feel confident that that's the case. Yeah, I mean, a team that plays, they're younger than a lot of teams that make it to this point. Their star is younger than a lot of teams that make it to this point. They play more players than a lot of teams that make it to this point in terms of like how deep they go on their bench. Their pace is different than a lot of teams that make it to this point. They're like very much not like other teams, which made game one fun. Hopefully, it makes the rest of the series really fun too. Matt, one of the topics today, and I think it's justified, is okay. Like there's sort of two different Celtics, right? There's the Celtics that have Kristaps Porzingis that won a million games in the regular season that were like so good when he played, and then there's the Celtics that played last night where Al Horford plays almost 40 minutes, and they're clearly two different teams. So I think like what I'm always really interested in is like, all right, how far do I think the Porzingis Celtics can go? Like, what's their ceiling? Like, is their ceiling just like blow out whoever in the title and win the title? Maybe. And then what's the ceiling if it's not that? If it's Porzingis is banged up and he tries to come back, and it is Al Horford for 39 minutes. Like, is that team beating Minnesota? Is that team beating Dallas? Like, does Porzingis's kind of successful return, successful being a key word there, does that like change the course of who you have winning the title this year?
No, I think I really think here's the thing. I think Porzingis matters for margin, Ken. Like that to me is more of the thing is like if they're going to lose, they're going to lose with Porzingis. And if they're going to win without Porzingis. It's not that he's irrelevant. It's that he shifts the margin. So if they're going to win by more if Kristaps plays. And if they lose, they're probably going to lose by less if Kristaps plays. But I don't think he shifts the overall directional outcome. If we talk about this from a betting perspective, the way I have this cap right now is pretty simple. If the Wolves get out of the series with the Dallas Mavericks, I think the Wolves are winning the title. If the Mavericks get out of the series with the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think the Celtics are winning the title. The Celtics are getting out regardless. I love the Pacers, but they can't. I just don't think they can do this. So it really is just kind of a matter of if you should. I think you should cap it. And you should take finals bets based off of that, which is whichever team that you think gets out of the conference finals on the Western side should impact how you bet Boston. Because Minnesota, I think, is on the tier of Boston. I think they're that good, particularly without Kristaps Porzingis. I don't look at it and go like, well, if Kristaps is out, the Wolves can win. But if he comes back, I think that the Wolves can beat them with Kristaps Porzingis. I don't think he meaningfully shifts that dynamic, nor do I think that the Mavericks are suddenly going to be in a favorite position or match up way better if they don't have Kristaps. I think it's really with where we're at with these two potential matchups in the finals, if we just assume Celtics advance. I don't think it really matters except for when we get into game margin, series margin, those types of prices.
Man, I'm in the same mindset. I think a lot of people probably feel that way. Like Minnesota win the title. If Dallas beats them, probably would like Boston to win that series. Because of that, are you doing anything in the finals MVP market just because of, who wins could determine like what team that you like? Have you bet into anything in that finals MVP?
Yeah, I've got some positions already. I took Jaylen Brown before the playoffs began. I love that Jaylen Brown ticket. I've got a Derek White ticket as well, just based off of the idea of like, there's a chance that White really is the most impactful player. Have taken now at this point, I'm betting Tatum because I've got those positions, but also I think it makes a lot of sense. Now we'll get to the Western Conference and I want to save that, but I will say that based off of my expected matchup, I think Tatum is going to have a pretty good series based off of who he's going to be facing, how that kind of works out, the pick and roll coverage that he'll face in that. He'll be a lot more, I think, honestly, comfortable in some of those scenarios. And so he'll also have a lot of shooting volume. And this so often, like Ken does such a great job on this show after show, year after year, is like, hey, like it's usually the best player. Like it's just like usually the best player. and so yeah. The best player right now is a plus price in the market. So I'm getting in on that as much as possible. But I do think that there's a distinct possibility that the player that we think is the best player, which is Tatum, I think Jaylen Brown's been the best player for Boston this season. So if I think that, I kind of have to bet Jaylen at the numbers that he's at for finals MVP plus 850, plus 550 in the market, depending on where you're at. There's value, I think, to be found there from that perspective based off of what I'm expecting in the conference finals.